Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Kurama travels back in time to save Naruto. To make a tragedy, you break something beautiful and frame the pieces. To make a victory, you break something mighty and rebuild it piece by piece. To make a life, you glue the pieces together and hope for the best. Kurama's still getting the hang of this human thing, but given that he's 30 years back in time with catastrophes to prevent and a blonde brat to save, he'll have to figure things out on the fly. Luckily, living with Naruto's been good for his ability to improvise, if nothing else. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. This story was inspired by how Backslide would have gone if the time-traveling Kurama was actually Kurama. Additionally, this is not a simple rewrite of Backslide with the names switched up and isn't going to be a straight rewrite of Backslide, but there will be similarities. Chapter 4 Scintilla. Kurama's first instinct is to throw himself forward, claws leading, and rip the intruder open from stem to stern. His second is to dive for safety and set the forest on fire to cover his escape. His third, in contrast, is to twitch with tension, but otherwise stay where he is, because that lichen-like shock of gray hair is very, very familiar. Thankfully, the masked Ninumbu clearly doesn't make any hostile moves either. He eyes Kurama, who eyes him right back, and neither of them move. Very carefully and slowly, Kurama takes a half step away, and then lifts his hands, palms facing out, to show they're empty of weapons. Honestly, it's an idiotic gesture, probably propagated by civilians. There's never been a single shinobi anywhere who stopped being a threat just because they weren't holding a weapon. Still, the meaning behind it is clear, and Kurama really doesn't want to start a fight with this particular ninja. Not because he thinks he'll lose, he's the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and after Kakuzu he'll be damned if he'll let himself lose to anyone ever again, but because if they do get in a fight, it will be to the death. Living in Kaguya's war-torn world means Kurama's very familiar with hoarding power. However, that's hardly the same thing as holding back. All it's taught him is how to win with as few blows possible, and he can't risk that here. Not with the changes to the timeline and to Naruto himself that would doubtless occur. If it comes down to it, he'll abort the mission and go chop the stupid firewood. He's not about to risk his Naruto never coming into being because of this man's death. Then the man's head tips, bird-like and curious, and he lifts gloved hands. Rapid-fire hand signs flicker in the firelight, and Kurama squints at him dubiously. He might have shared headspace with Naruto for almost 40 years and, as Hokage, Naruto had to learn Umbu signs, but like fuck he knows what the collection of gibberish means. A sharp gesture, clearly impatient, and then the Umbu repeats the signs more slowly. Now that he can actually see the damn things, Kurama can catch a few he remembers. That's captive, definitely. And that's either rescue or contain or possibly dinner. Kurama's pretty sketchy on that particular sequence and, maybe 6. Ah, fuck it. Kurama rolls his eyes, waves to get the man's attention, and then jerks his thumb at the camp. He holds up 8 fingers for the 8 bandits grouped around the fire or sleeping off to the side, then points at himself, at them again, and then drags a finger across his throat in a gesture that can't be mistaken. For a long moment, the Umbu stares flatly at him. Then he sighs softly and nods in agreement. Good enough. Giving him a toothy smile, Kurama digs his claws into the tree trunk and leaps upward, silently pulling himself onto a wide limb. From there it's easy enough to inch his way along the branch and out over the edge of the camp, and one look tells him just what the Umbu was trying to say. There's a girl. Young, small, delicate-looking, her hair up in buns and tears on her cheeks. Her dress is better quality than anything he's seen in a long time, and she looks too scared to be a shinobi. Civilian, then, and likely noble, probably a hostage of some sort. Kurama grimaces faintly to himself, because that just made everything more complicated, but it's salvageable. Probably. A quick glance shows that more than half of the rough-looking men are bedded down, either asleep or on the verge of it, with only 3 sitting awake around the fire. There's one on either side of the girl, but Kurama thinks he can work around that. Quickly, he shrugs out of the voluminous kimono shirt Han provided, reknots the sash around his waist, and looks for his temporary ally. From the shadows near the base of the tree, the Umbu looks back, mask tipped questioningly. With an effort, Kurama dredges up a few of the very, very long forgotten hand signs which he honestly never paid any attention to, mostly because it was Sasuke teaching Naruto, and things had quickly devolved into sex and signs carefully and awkwardly. I retrieve. Cover? A nod, sharp and quick, and the man crouches down, letting his body block the light as he draws his tanto, so that no one will notice its glint. Seeing that he's ready, Kurama takes a breath, gathers himself, and leaps. Black cloth drops right over the little girl's startled face, covering her completely even as Kurama lands on the man at her right. A shove puts the bandit on the ground, and a sharp twist breaks his neck before Kurama launches himself at the other guard, claws first. At the same moment, the Umbu explodes out of the shadows, appearing between three bandits as they scramble to their feet, but Kurama doesn't pause to watch. He tears out the guard's throat in a splatter of blood, ducks the swing of the third's long knife, and then gathers his chakra and swipes down hard. From this distance, with a bijou shockwave set against a normal human? Kurama hears bones snapping as the bandit and the man behind him both go flying. Fighting hasn't been this easy in a long time. Kagaya's undead soldiers, pulled up like grisly puppets by their chakra networks and drawing power directly from the goddess herself, were never this easy to put down, and they always tended to get back up unless burned to ashes. But these are humans, civilian men who can't even mold chakra, and Kurama feels almost ridiculous pitting his strength against them. It's one thing for the Kyuubi to wipe out whole towns full of humanity's darkest members, but 8 of them with assistance? It almost makes up for his stupidity against Kakuza yesterday. The last of the Umbu's 3 opponents is just falling as Kurama straightens, the girl safely behind him. The last bandit is trapped between them, wild-eyed and pale, clutching a dulled sword. With a low laugh, Kurama takes a menacing step forward and man's eyes automatically dart to him. Too late he realizes the consequences of the action, his head snaps up, horror blooming, but at the same instant a tanto drives right through his back. For a long moment there's silence, and then with a short, choking gasp he crumples bonelessly. Kurama's seen enough death, he doesn't linger to watch this one. Leaving the Umbu to deal with the bodies, Kurama turns to where the bound little girl is still sitting, covered by his shirt. The fight was quiet, but for her sake he hoped she passed out rather than listening to it. The kid can't be more than 4, if that, and Kurama remembers the orphans Kagaya's forces left behind. He's dealt with enough traumatized kids for one lifetime, thanks. Futilely, Kurama wipes his gory left hand on a clump of grass, then gives it up as hopeless and simply tucks it a little behind him. With his clean hand he reaches out and pulls the dark cloth off the girl's head, and when wide, terrified eyes snap to him immediately he gives her the gentlest smile he can muster. What would the brat do? He thinks a little desperately. Damn it, how would Naruto handle this? Think. Hey, he says softly. You're okay now. They're never going to be able to scare you again. You're safe. No matter how many other duties Naruto and Sasuke had, they always made a point of it to spend time with the orphan children. Every day they were in camp or traveling, they helped care for the kids, played or taught or simply talked to them, and Kurama can't help but remember those pale, tired, grief-stricken faces right now. There's not really any use comparing kidnapping to seeing your entire world shattering around, because they're horrible in different ways, but they're both terrible. They're both things no child should ever have to face. Kurama is fond of kids, for the most part. He likes them well enough, for being tiny larval stage humans, but he's never really had to interact with them beyond just watching Naruto do it. Once or twice, before things got really bad, and they had to conserve strength wherever possible, Naruto had let Kurama manifest a time or two so the brats could use him as a jungle gym. It had been well beneath his dignity, but even so Kurama had never complained. They were wary of him, for the first few minutes, but after Naruto had scaled his side and perched proudly between his ears, laughing his idiotic head off, they'd been more than willing to take advantage. Having humans accept him so easily, overcome their fears so quickly that part Kurama had enjoyed. This helping the girl is something Naruto would have strongly approved of, even if he would have been saddened by Kurama's slaughter of the bandits. Kurama doesn't particularly care about the latter, he's still a bijou, after all, still a creation of chakra that feeds off malice and hatred, but for Naruto, he'll try to keep her spirits up. The terror in her face isn't quite disappearing, although it's easing a little. She blinks, sending more tears cascading down her cheeks, but she's stopped whimpering. Kurama gives her another smile, trying to make it encouraging rather than scary, and reaches out slowly. I'm going to get that gag off, if you're okay with me touching you, he soothes. Once that's gone you might feel a bit better. Lifting his hand, he twists it to show her his nails and says, I don't want to cut you, but these are pretty sharp, so try not to wiggle. It okay for me to take that off? A pause, and then the girl nods emphatically, making muffled noises. Kurama chuckles a little, reaching out, and she goes determinedly still. Here goes, he warns her, then tips her head slightly to the side, slides a claw up under the rough twine, and presses carefully. It takes a moment, and a bit more pressure than he'd like, but with one or two cautious sawing motions the threads part. Kurama unwinds them from her head, then helps her get the wad of cloth out of her mouth. While she's busy spitting out stray threads and making disgusted faces, Kurama cuts through the ropes binding her hands and legs, and, remembering the few times Naruto got tied up, carefully starts to rub the chafed areas to get the blood flowing again. The girl hisses a little, and Kurama winces. Sorry, but we don't want your fingers falling off, right? He murmurs, glancing up, and finds that wide blue eyes are fixed on his face. His heart shudders and stumbles in his chest, even though they aren't quite the right shade of blue. One little hand comes up, reaching out, and Kurama warily holds still as the girl snags a handful of his hair. She pulls the locks towards her, studying them intently, and then looks up to tell Kurama very seriously, it's like my favorite red crayon. Kurama looks down too, and supposes that of all the things she could have compared it to blood, fire, anger, death, that's probably the nicest he's going to get. Thanks, he offers with a small smile. Your hair's very pretty too. Not blonde, and he's glad of it. He doesn't think he could handle the combination again so soon, no matter how different she is from his Jinchuriki. Brown is good. Brown is safe right now. Did you get hurt anywhere? Almost instantly her eyes fill with tears again, and with a muffled whimper she throws herself forward. Kurama just barely manages to swallow a yelp as she collides with his chest, rocking him back on his heels. Tiny shoulders shake with what is clearly the beginnings of a sob, and Kurama feels panic building. Hey, he tries, soft and as comforting as he can manage. Hey there, what's this about? I know you were scared, but you're okay now. The bad men are dead, they can't hurt you ever again. That gets him a sniffle, and with absolutely no idea what else to do, Kurama wraps his arm around the girl and shifts back to sit in the dirt, pulling her more securely into his lap. Oh Sage, why me? He thinks, entirely, unbecomingly agitated, and tries to drown out the avalanche of alarm with the quiet shushing noises he's heard Naruto make when in this situation. And babbling. That always seemed to work for Naruto. SHH, everything's okay. You're fine. Fine, you've been saved just like a princess, huh? A beautiful princess with big blue eyes, but you've got dozens of boys in love with you back home. You'll definitely have any boy you look at tripping over his own feet. Never seen a braver princess, your dad must be so proud of you. The muffled sobbing is tapering off, replaced by quiet hiccups that manage to sound completely forlorn. I want to see my daddy, she manages, barely understandable between the mucus and the way her face is smashed against Kurama's bare chest. I want to see my daddy, but they wouldn't let me. Kurama casts a near-desperate glance at the Umbu, who is like a damned coward keeping a good 10 feet between them at all times, even as he warily checks the perimeter. The man seems to feel his look, because he glances back and answers the questioning jerk of Kurama's head with a single sign that's thankfully recognizable. Alive. Thank fuck. You're going to see him really soon, princess, Kurama assures her, and is unspeakably relieved when she pulls away enough to look up at him. Except, damn, those wide, watering eyes might as well qualify as a lethal weapon, and it takes effort not to flinch back. Instead, he strokes his clean hand over her hair, and gives her what is hopefully more smile than grimace. I promise, he's waiting for you, and he misses you a lot. Look. He even hired a big, strong umbu to find you, and get you back from those bad men. The girl shifts just enough to stare dubiously at the umbu, who holds his ground and stares right back, brightly painted mask eerie in the flickering firelight. The man takes a step forward, as if to join them, and the girl squeaks in fear, ducking back down into Kurama's hold. Oh no. Kurama's getting a bad feeling about this. Hey, he soothes, shooting the umbu a nasty, pointed look over his shoulder before going back to trying to coax the girl-shaped leech off of him. None of that, now. He's one of the good guys, and he's going to take you back to your dad. That's what you want, right? Not only does the girl refuse to budge, her small arms come up to wrap around Kurama's neck, clinging so tightly he suspects he'll need a pry bar to get her off. He's scary. She protests. Like an oni. And, there's that sniffle again. Oh no. Conceivably, Kurama could wrench her off, shove her at the umbu, and go back to making tracks for Konoha as quickly as humanly possible. He's tempted to try it, if only because all his past interactions with children have had a time limit, and he has no clue how to interact with them for longer than a few hours. But Naruto wouldn't do that. And though he'd be unhappy about Kurama killing, which Kurama always tried to tone down for his sake, at least where basic humans were concerned, though he's never really seen the point of sparing those who feel truly wicked, he'd be furious if Kurama abandoned a child. Even now, the thought of Naruto angry with him is enough to make Kurama wince. He casts a look at the gray-haired umbu, who tips his head questioningly in response. Rolling his eyes, Kurama gestures at the girl, then at himself, and then points at the man and waves a hand in the direction of Konoha. The umbu hesitates, body language wary and cautious, and then slowly nods his head. Kurama urges the girl again, resigning himself to his fate. He's not an oni, I promise, but if it makes you feel better, I'll come too. We'll bring you back to your dad together. That way there's no chance of anything else happening. Now, what's your name, princess? The hands curled around his shoulders unclench a little, even though she's still gripping tightly, and she whispers, I'm Naho. Naho. Your dad's bright purpose, huh? Kurama teases gently. That's a pretty name for a pretty girl. I'm Kurama, Naho. It's very nice to meet you. Thank you for saving me, Kurama, Naho whispers. I was really scared. Despite himself, Kurama remembers a little blonde boy in the woods, calling on his power for the first time to save a teacher. Remembers a haze of terror and resolve, the drive to protect even if it cost him his life. A sob catches in his own throat, and he bows his head, pressing his cheek to Naho's dirty hair. That's okay, he whispers back. You were really brave anyway. I'm glad I could save you. It's true. He hadn't expected it to be, but it is. This isn't attacking Kakuzu in a haze of crimson fury and the choking need for revenge. This is just a little bit of good. One life made brighter, and even if she's not quite one of Naruto's precious people, he knows Naruto wouldn't mind this pause in his mission. Not when it helped rescue a little girl. An icy wind slides through the forest, rustling the treetops, and making Kurama shiver. He eases back a little, stroking Naho's hair comfortingly, and clears his throat. Think you can let me get my shirt back on? He asks, patting her head. If I'm going to Konoha with you, I don't want to scare people. It's about a day and a half on foot, the umbu says unexpectedly, making Naho flinch as he crouches down next to them. A sharp gray eye studies the girl, then flicks up to Kurama's face. More quietly, he says, I can put her to sleep and take her myself. It would make things easier. Unconsciously, Kurama's arm tightens around the little girl, and he bares his teeth before he can stop it. Keep your damn jutsus to yourself, he growls. She's just a kid, and she's fine. I'll carry her. There's no need for that shit. The man snorts softly, even as Naho glances up at him with bright-eyed curiosity and says, "My daddy told me those are bad words." Yeah, well, it was a bad suggestion, Kurama huffs, reaching for his shirt. The tacky blood on his fingers smears a little, and he grimaces as he stands. That'll teach him to go for the throat with his bare hands. Thankfully, there's plenty of snow, and he settles Naho by the gnarled roots of a tree while he scrubs his skin clean. The Umbu follows, hovering like a shadow and making wary sweeps of their surroundings. Giving the man a roll of his eyes, Kurama shakes excess water from his hand, then reaches for his top. "Cool it," he orders. "No one with ill intentions is within a mile of us. We'll be fine." He shrugs the fabric on, and maybe it isn't as warm as it could be, but the heavy cloth is still a relief against the bite of the wind. "Quietly enough that the girl won't hear?" he asks. "Her parents are in Konoha, right?" "Her father hired me," the Umbu answers. "He was there when I left." Satisfied, Kurama nods and rises to his feet. "Are you cold, Naho?" he asks, figuring that she's not. Her robes look pretty warm, and she's got a shawl over her shoulders, but if she is, he has no compunctions raiding the bandits' supplies. It's not like they're going to be using the stuff, after all. "I'm okay." The girl smiles at him, still a little wary but mostly just sweet. "Are we going to see my daddy now?" "We are," Kurama assures her, crouching down to pick her up. She comes readily, and there are still tear tracks on her face. There's still a faint tremble in her voice, but she looks like a stubborn little thing, and despite the trauma, Kurama is willing to bet she'll be fine. Little kids are amazingly resilient. With a smile in return, he scoops her up, propping her on his hip, and turns to raise an expectant brow at his companion. The Umbu looks at him, looks at the girl, and steps back. "I'll set up a perimeter," he mutters, and is gone in a blur. Coward, Kurama huffs, but when Naho glances at him he just shakes his head. "It's nothing, princess. Some people are just silly." She gives him another faintly tremulous smile, then says, "If I'm a princess, does that mean you're my knight?" Naruto would be laughing his ass off right now, Kurama thinks with a sigh, and it hurts, like a crippling blow. But it's bearable, if gutting. "I could be," he answers, glancing at the sun that's just starting to rise and then turning south. "But I think I'd rather be a monster." He can't quite tell if that statement's a lie. This is Naruto's body, and as much as he'd prefer Naruto to still be the one in it, if that's out of the question, Kurama would rather it be in his own possession, and the irony of that statement makes him want to laugh bitterly than Kagaya's. Naho wrinkles her nose. "Don't monsters eat princesses?" she asks skeptically. "Well, normally, but you're a special princess," Kurama counters, tapping her lightly on the tip of the nose. "You've got powerful monster-taming abilities to make me your friend. Sides, I think the Umbu over there would be a lot better at the whole night thing than I would." There's a sound suspiciously like the Umbu missing a branch and having to lunge for another, and Kurama hides a smirk. The girl looks equally doubtful. "Really?" Kurama really shouldn't. He doesn't want to get dragged into T&I the moment they set foot in the village after all. But, well, Kitsune, and all that. "Sure," he says, just managing to smother the pure wickedness in his voice. "Umbu are strong and brave, right? And I best Sir Umbu over there has a dark, tragic past he's trying to atone for that's how most knights are, right? He's probably really handsome under that mask too." "I still like you better, Kurama," Naho declares after a moment of thought, apparently not convinced. "You can be a monster if you want to, as long as you're still my friend." Blue eyes just aren't fair, Kurama thinks with an internal sigh, and pats Naho's head. "No worries," he tells her gently. "I'll be your friend for as long as you need me." Satisfied, Naho puts her head down on his shoulder, one arm curled around his neck. The thumb on her other hand is inching towards her mouth, but Kurama isn't going to say anything. He's hardly going to deny her what small bits of comfort she can find. Gently rubbing her back, he makes for a small break in the trees, and then towards the road beyond the woods. Originally, he'd been planning to sneak into Konoha, find Naruto to make sure that some version of his Jinchuriki was still alive and well, and then hightail it back out to hunt down Akatsuki. Still, as far as sneaking into a ninja village goes, walking through the front gate with an Umbu at his side will doubtless simplify things. Even if it puts him in the spotlight, Kurama's confident that he can slip a watcher if he needs to. He won't do anything to hurt Konoha after all. There's never been a place Naruto loved more, but he won't let them hold him either. He's got his mission, the one Naruto died for, and he'll never waver from it. With deadly silence, the Umbu leaps from the trees to land in the road beside him, then straightens easily and falls into step. Kurama gives him a sideways glance only to find that he's getting the same in return, and has to look away again. Without the adrenaline, without the fight, it's easy to remember just who this man is, what he meant to Naruto. Dead, long dead, but still a pain that was second only to Sasuke's. So, he says gruffly, glancing down at Naho for want of a better place to aim his eyes. What should I call you? Names have power. Names have meaning. Kurama knows it better than anyone. Before, he only ever gave his name to one person, and only Naruto used it. Sasuke, Sakura, and the rest simply called him the Kyuubi, and Kurama preferred it that way. His name is his own, given to him by the Sage of Six Paths himself, and even now Kurama will never give it lightly. The rules are a bit different for humans, but Kurama thinks this man would agree with him. There's a long pause, and Kurama looks up again, have to check that the Umbu is still there. He is, gaze turned away, shoulders stiff and back straight. There's blood on his gloves, though he doesn't seem to have noticed. Or maybe he has Kurama's not good at catching things like that, especially when he himself doesn't particularly care about the deaths they caused. Humans, and poor ones at that, and Naruto would yell and hit him for it, but Kurama will never mourn them. Then the man shifts, just a little, and his head lifts. One gray eye sharp and steady, and the other. Kurama feels his hackles rise at the sight of red and black, and has to strangle back the low, furious growl that wants to rumble out. The Sharingan, and that Sharingan in particular, is never going to hold good memories for him. A quick tip of the Umbu's head to check their surroundings, a glance at Naho mostly asleep already, and then he says very quietly, "I'm Hound." Kurama inclines his head, but doesn't otherwise react. He already knew, after all, but he's not about to use a name he hasn't been given. A moment, a sudden thought, and then his mouth quirks up in a small, faintly wistful smile. Another bad idea, but, well, they always seem to work out pretty well for Naruto. Not looking at the man, he offers, Uzumaki Kurama, and pretends he doesn't hear Hound's breath catch. Well, it's something at least. Something to hold on to, Kurama thinks, burying his nose in Naho's hair and just missing Naruto. Soon, he promises himself, and it will be. Even if it's just a glimpse, just a moment, that's all he needs. Proof that Naruto, even if he's not quite his Naruto yet, is still alive. Then he can move forward. Then he can keep walking, and he tells himself he won't look back. Chapter 5, V. Propinquity. Author's note, this FIC freaking crawls until Chapter 7. However, starting in Chapter 8 it takes a very sharp left turn. Traveling as a human is still stupid and boring, but at least this time Kurama has something to occupy his attention. How's it this red? Did you paint it? Seated on Kurama's shoulder, one of his arms hooked over her legs to hold her in place, Naho pats at his hair, combing through the strands like she's looking for the real color hidden underneath. Kurama rolls his eyes a little where she can't see it, but answers as patiently as he's able, "No. It's just like that." He does wonder, a little morbidly, why he doesn't simply look like Naruto, even though he's grateful for it. Just knowing this is Naruto body is bad enough. It would be an even worse hell, having to see his lost Jinchuriki staring back at him every time he looked in a mirror. Granted, he hasn't even done that much yet, regardless of it being Naruto's last suggestion, and despite the having the opportunity at the inn. It will feel final, Kurama thinks sadly. As grateful as he is, looking in a mirror will show him without a doubt that he's the sole occupant of this form, that there's little to nothing of Naruto left to it. The basic shape, maybe, and the blood Kurama has claimed with his assumed last name, but everything else will be Kurama, and if the color of his skin and his hair is anything to go by, he'll look very little like his lost friend. Hound is watching them out of the corner of his eye, porcelain mask still concealing his face, but body language wary. The fact that he's walking next to them again is an improvement, though. He'd taken to the trees again the moment Naho woke up from her nap and started wanting to interact again. Kurama ignores the man as best he can, although he's uncomfortably aware that this is indeed one of Naruto's precious people, more or less. Maybe not quite, maybe not yet, but the framework is there. Surely Naruto would want him to help, despite Kurama only having the vaguest idea how. After all, this isn't Naruto's beloved perverted teacher, porn book fixed firmly in front of his face, ready with a disarming, deceptive smile the moment anyone tries to take him seriously. This is Umbu's hound, alert but silent, with a weight of old, half-faded bleakness around him that sets Kurama's teeth on edge. He doesn't remember all that much of Hound's history beyond the parts where it intersected with Naruto's. A bit about Umbu, a passing recollection that the brat's other sensei, Yamato, once served under him, mention made of Itachi once doing the same. There's little else he can use to judge where he is in the time period, and it would definitely be suspicious to randomly ask how long ago the Kyuubi attack happened, especially, Kurama thinks darkly, if it hasn't happened yet. Kakuzu's appearance was a clue, and at least means he's back sometime before Naruto's first Chunin exams. Haiden was a new member of Akatsuki when they started seriously hunting the Bijou, and if he isn't there the organization is probably still gathering power. Maybe finding Han was a coincidence, or maybe they were starting with what they considered the weakest, least protected Jinchuriki, since Han's known more for his steam-enhanced taijutsu than any flashy ninjutsu, and most of the others are wary or locked away. Still not a concrete marker where the timeline is concerned, and Kurama's getting frustrated guessing. If. Hey. Naho chirps, yanking just a little too hard on Kurama's hair, and making him swallow a yelp. Are you a daddy too, Kurama? What the hell? Kurama eyes the girl on his shoulder incredulously, but in the face of her wide-eyed enthusiasm can't quite muster the cutting retort he'd otherwise use. With a sigh, he rolls his eyes and says flatly no. Her expression crumples a little, and with a wild surge of terror at the thought of more tears, Kurama blurts out, "But I have siblings." Naho's expression brightens like he flipped a switch more than quickly enough to send a trickle of suspicion sneaking through Kurama's mind, though it's rapidly forgotten when she says, "You do." Oh. How many? I've always wanted a little sister. Kurama hesitates, considering, but what the hell? It's not like the Bijou are widely known by their true names, rather than their tails. Still, probably best to avoid mention of Shikaka. The damned Tanuki has a bad habit of introducing himself, or boasting about himself by name in the middle of his rampages, and though it's unlikely Hound will make the connection, Kurama would rather not risk being ripped out of this body, and sealed into another. If that would even work. He's a little curious, but definitely not enough to test it. Well, I'd give you mine, Kurama answers dryly, but I don't have a sister. I've got 8 brothers instead. He's wondered about that before too, because as far as he knows gender is a voluntary choice for the Bijou, but most of them use masculine pronouns or male names. Komiai is really the only one he'd peg as female, or maybe neither, but given how the Nanabai talks he's not going to make that call until he asks. For now, he'll stick with the default. 8? Naho sounds odd. Kurama gives her a quick smile, ducking a little to keep her from whacking her head on a branch. The forests have been getting thicker as they move towards Konoha, and they've been walking through trees for at least 2 hours now. Yeah. I'm the oldest. By, 12 seconds, but it counts, and Shikako can just go suck on a lemon. They're all really silly, even though they're powerful. Matatabi likes to run up and down mountains for fun, and Saiken's always blowing bubbles. Well, his Jinchuriki is, but Kurama knows the Rokubi. Saiken is just as fond of them as his host. Besides, a little embellishment never hurt anyone, and it's not as if Naho is ever going to meet the other bijou. Naho giggles, finally abandoning Kurama's hair to reach up and snatch at pretty leaves. I bet you live in a Bayig house, she says, stretching her arms out wide. You'd need 8 bedrooms, and a big kitchen, and a big table, and she trails off, face scrunching a little as she clearly tries to think of everything. Kurama can't fight a faint, mostly sad smile, though he doesn't let her see it. The last time he saw all of his fellow bijou in one place, they were preparing to defeat Kaguya for the first time. After that, by the time they realized she'd managed to leave traces of herself scattered around the world, and then come back through them, Komiai and Isabo had both been devoured. Kokuo had gone into hiding, though it hadn't helped him in the long run, and all the rest had tried to stand together and fight, but had been lured out and overwhelmed instead. The only ones Kurama ever saw after that were Shikaku and Ryuki, mostly because their Jinchuriki joined Naruto in spearheading the resistance. The Achibi and Hachibi had also joined them, if briefly, but Kaguya had gotten to them in the end. She got to everyone in the end. Do they live in Konoha too? Naho asks, bending down to peer at his face, and Kurama tries to wipe away all the melancholy that's gathered. No, he manages after a second of struggle. They live far, far away. I don't think I'm going to be able to see them again for a while. Hound casts him a sharp look that shades toward considering, and Kurama ignores it. He doesn't want to think about what he's giving away, or what assumptions the Umbu might be making. It's none of his business. Besides, if he thinks too much about it, the lump in his throat stupid, because it's not like he was ever close to the other bijou, or friends with them, or anything, even though the ones he knew are as dead as creatures of chakra can be. That lump will choke off his breath, and that's definitely an ignoble way to die. There's a pause, and then small arms wrap around the top of his head as Naho hugs the only part of him that's within easy reach. I'm sorry, Kurama, she says, and she sounds sad. For him. Even though she was the one who just got kidnapped by bandits, and held hostage for who knows how long. I'm sure they miss you lots and lots. You're a really good big brother. He's not. He wouldn't even count himself a good friend, but she can hardly know that. Thanks, princess, he murmurs and pats her knee gently. I'm sure you'll be a great sister, if you ever get the chance. She smiles at that, entirely pleased, and starts chattering about dolls and dress-up and all the things she could do with a sister, and for the sake of his own sanity Kurama tunes most of it out, though he tries to make interested noises at the appropriate times. Hound, he notices sourly, is edging away again, as if he's about to make for the branches and hide, but Kurama is on to him, the coward. The knowledge of how bad he seems to be with kids is tempered by the memory of Naruto's Genin team, and Kurama has to stifle a snicker. If ever a man deserved to get saddled with Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, and Hirono Sakura all at the same time, it's him. And Kurama means that in every conceivable way. It's slightly possible he still carries a grudge for that 1,000 years of pain incident, but Kurama is definitely not telling. Kakashi has been Umbu for 6 years already. He's seen plenty of killers and even more desperate souls. There have been traitors and heroes and normal people struggling under the weight of their burdens, and with an effort he's learned to read them all. The past leaves a mark, and Kakashi knows that better than anyone. It takes a certain kind of past, too, to make someone like himself, to create a man who can be a murderer in one instant and a friend in the next, with barely a heartbeat in between. There has to be darkness, pain, the kind of pain that you can turn on other people as easily as you can turn it on yourself, that you can swing like a sword even as you bleed crimson. An edge of viciousness, a touch of self-loathing, traces of this is all I'm good for, so I might as well as you watch the light fade from your victim's eyes. Burdens like that can be tempered, turned into a weapon to do what's right, but it's so terribly easy for them to fester. And when you lance the sword, the only thing it weeps is death. Or maybe that's just him projecting. Still, he saw Kurama tear out a man's throat with his bare hands, then coo nonsense at a little girl with gore all over his skin. Kakashi as a shinobi has been one all this life, but that was an impressive shift in priorities. Though perhaps it wasn't. After all, the men were dead before Kurama allowed himself to be anything but a killer, and Kakashi knows that mindset intimately. Were he not on a mission, he might have done the same. The work was finished, the girl was rescued, and it was all right to go back to being human instead of a weapon. Box up the monster, wipe off the blood, paste on a smile, and no one will ever know anything's happened. Kurama isn't dressed like a shinobi, but that switch alone tells Kakashi that he is one, without a doubt. There's a squeal, a cheerful shriek, and it takes effort for Kakashi not to grab for his tanto. The other man casts him a glance that's probably meant to be amused, but doesn't quite manage it thanks to the lines that pull tight around his eyes, lines that say he knows exactly why Kakashi reacted as he did, and would join him if he had an ounce less pride. Even so, he tosses the little girl up in the air again, then catches her and says, "Doing okay, Naho?" "Yep." The girl laughs. "Do it again, Kurama." Technically, he shouldn't be here. Kakashi should have killed him the moment they came face to face, or at the very least knocked him out. He should have put the girl to sleep, then taken her and headed for Konoha as fast as he could, because this is a mission. There's no allowance for delays, especially when they take the form of mysterious strangers appearing out of nowhere. For all Kakashi knows, Kurama could be one of the bandits, or an enemy operative sent to capture the girl. But that first glimpse of him at the edge of the camp, wide startled eyes, and then clear exasperation, didn't seem like the reaction of an enemy. Add to that the fact that he didn't understand basic shinobi signs, but caught the handful of Konoha Umbu code Kakashi threw in as a test, and then his strange ability to call up waves of force without so much as a hand sign, and it makes for a confusing picture. Kakashi hasn't forgotten Tenzo. Hasn't forgotten Root and Danzo's desire for shinobi with unique bloodlines. And if that wasn't some sort of Kekkai Genkai, Kakashi will eat his left sandal. After all, not only did he activate it without hand signs, but the redhead has claws. Small ones that look like fingernails, but even so. Kakashi saw them rip straight through unprotected flesh, and he's not about to underestimate them. Even though Kurama isn't carrying so much as a kunai, he's got the chakra reserves and agility to justify it. The little girl is talking again, but Kakashi doesn't bother to listen. After all, that's one of the reasons he allowed Kurama to come along. Let the redhead deal with the child. Even if he turns out to be an enemy, Kakashi is confident that he can handle the man, and even if he can't, he's certain he'll be able to hold him off long enough to grab the girl and get away. Besides, listening to her chatter reminds Kakashi of Naruto, and the fact that it's been weeks since he was in the village long enough to take even a passing glance at his sensei's son. He doesn't mind the missions, but he misses being on Naruto's guard. "Are you a shinobi like Sarumbu?" The girl asks, loudly enough to catch his attention, and he gives the pair a sideways glance. Naho has migrated to Kurama's hip again, looking very pleased and very curious, and the other man has his eyes fixed forward, apparently pretending that he hasn't got a 4-year-old clinging to him like he's her new favorite stuffed toy. Kakashi hides an amused snort, though judging by the faintly sour glance Kurama sends him he didn't hide it well enough. "Not really," Kurama answers, and reaches up to tap his bare forehead. "No hitayate, because I'm not working for any of the villages." "That's how you can tell if a shinobi is your friend or not, princess." "Unallied, then." It's strange, because even given just the handful of skills Kakashi has seen, Kurama would make a skilled jounin anywhere he wished to go. Some villages, especially the smaller ones, are always looking for fresh blood, and there's a certain level of prestige to the job. Yet more scraps of uncertainty to join all the others, and Kakashi frowns, casting another glance at his unexpected companion. He remembers Kurama's reaction when the girl admitted to being scared, remembers the grief that showed for half a heartbeat before he shoved it away. Grief like that, Kakashi understands it all too well. Desolation, sorrow, aimless fury, my world ended, that expression says. I understand your fear. My world ended and I'm the only one left. Though maybe that's him projecting too. Like the leaf. The girl chirps, drawing an exaggerated swirl in the air. The shinobi that came to get me had leaves on their headbands. Kurama blinks at her, brows lifting faintly in surprise, and then glances up at Kakashi questioningly. Kakashi ignores the look. If Kurama is an enemy, he'll already know the girl's circumstances. If he isn't, there's no need to tell him. Mouth tightening with clear aggravation, Kurama drops his eyes back to his passenger and manages a faint smile. Kakashi wonders if the girl can see how awkward it is, if that's the reason she's asking distracting questions and rambling. It wouldn't be a surprise, given her mother's identity. Geisha are brilliant at that kind of thing. Yeah, Kurama allows, boosting her up a little higher on his side. Kakashi estimates just how long he's been carrying her without a break and adds above-average strength to the growing list of his abilities. A leaf means Kanahagakur. They're the ones your dad hired, so you can trust them. There are a lot of good people in Konoha. That's a very broad statement for an unaffiliated shinobi to make. Kakashi lifts a curious brow, half wishing he could ditch the mask, pull out his Ika, and use that to cover his sideways glances. Umbu masks are hell on the peripheral vision, and he's definitely wary of this stranger. Wary and interested, because bits keep showing through, between his skills and his knowledge, and his name, and surely any cover story worth using wouldn't leave quite that many questions behind. From there, the logical belief would be that it's not a cover, but Kakashi has been a shinobi too long to simply let himself believe that. The name alone is jarring. Kakashi isn't certain that his heart has entirely recovered yet from hearing it fall so unexpectedly from the man's lips. This man especially, he thinks, casting Kurama another sideways glance. Because, the blood-red hair aside, Kakashi would mistake him for a Kumo native. He has the same dark skin, although the deep red eyes are more usual. It's not like villages have never intermarried, but there aren't supposed to be many Uzumaki left to intermarry with. Yuzushiogakure is 25 years destroyed now, and thanks to scavengers has been almost completely stripped of all traces of what it was. The ruins are mostly rubble and bones, and the village's few remaining people are scattered. Yuzushio was always a small village, hardly a fraction of Konoha's size, and the Uzumaki clan made up the bulk of its shinobi. When the village fell, so did they. Maybe one or two survived, lost in other countries, but to meet one is entirely unexpected. Too convenient, as well, given who Kakashi is and who trained him. Given that, had things turned out differently, he might as well be an older brother to the Kyubi Jinchuriki. Given who lives in the village they're headed for. Kurama's indignation when he suggested knocking the girl out was genuine. Kakashi could see it on his face, read it in his eyes as clear as day. The redhead isn't practiced hiding his emotions, or he just doesn't care to. Like with Kushina, everything he feels is reflected on his face, and Kakashi is skilled enough at reading people to know that it isn't faked. It's too awkward, too quick a reaction. The truth behind it is painfully obvious. And, maybe it isn't a front, but it's certainly an odd coincidence. Kakashi has long since stopped believing in coincidences. So, Kurama's knowledge of Konoha's specific Umbu code, his presence here on Kakashi's mission, his odd ability, those all say root. Or Danzo, at the very least. On the other hand, his hair, his emotional nature, and his chakra reserves say stray Uzumaki. To be honest, that fits better than the root theory. Danzo takes care to stamp every bit of sentimentality out of his operatives, and Kurama's reaction to the girl has been nothing but sentimentality. It's possible that Kurama is exactly who he says he is, even if it's not exactly likely after all. He looks at least 10 years older than Kakashi, or maybe a little more. That would put him at around Minato's age, and 10 when Yuzushio fell. Given the friendship between Yuzushio and Konoha, it's conceivable that he learned Umbu signs there. It would also fit the claim that he's not exactly a shinobi, the loss of his village meaning he was never promoted, and his claim that Konoha is full of good people. Surely only an ally would say something like that. And they live far, far away. I don't think I'm going to be able to see them again for a while. Kakashi knows loss when he hears it, and that was clear. A whole family, 9 brothers, dead or so thoroughly scattered that there's little hope of reuniting. That certainly sounds like the aftermath of Yuzushiyo's destruction. Of course, this is all speculation. Kakashi could be wildly off the mark and leading himself further astray with every conclusion. It makes sense though, and while it doesn't quite quell Kakashi's suspicion, well, it gives him an excuse for dragging the man along with him that the Sandaime will buy, beyond but small crying child, ew. 60-40 odds, Kakashi thinks, somewhere between morbid and reluctantly amused, that Sarutobi accepts it without booting him out the window. If, of course, Kurama doesn't turn out to actually be an enemy and try to slit his throat sometime in the night. You said Konoha was about a day and a half? Kurama asks suddenly, making Kakashi glance over. The girl is sacked out on his shoulder again, drooling a little, with one small hand fisted in black cloth. Ostensibly Kakashi should find the image cute. As it is, he's just glad she isn't drooling on him. He confirms after a moment. They've been walking the entire day, but given the child it's an easy, practically boring pace. On his own, Kakashi could have been in the village hours ago. Kurama huffs a little, mutters something that sounds close to like pulling goddamn teeth, and then raises his voice to add, "You good to keep walking?" Kakashi calculates the distance. If they don't make camp, which, honestly, sits better with him than leaving himself vulnerable to an unknown shinobi for hours at a stretch, they can make it back to Konoha by midnight, or a little after. Inconvenient timing, but Kakashi doesn't think the Sandaime will be put out to be dragged out of bed then. He was the one to assign Kakashi this mission, and make it an A rank despite the lack of real danger. Though, Kakashi supposes, that's more or less required when Fire Country's daimyo asks you to take care of something personally. Sure, he agrees easily, then stiffens as an unpleasant thought occurs to him and casts Kurama a wary sideways glance. Apparently able to read his trepidation clearly despite the mask, Kurama blows out a short, aggrieved sigh, rolls his eyes, and says with exasperation, "Get that look off your face, hound. I'm good to carry her, so you can stop looking like you're about to wet your pants at the thought of us trading." Kakashi protests, a little of the umbu composure he tries to keep finally slipping in the face of this grave offense. "I'm concerned about her comfort. She looks so much happier with you, that's all." "I'm sure," Kurama says dryly, entirely skeptical, but doesn't attempt to call him on it. Instead, he simply shifts Naho a little higher on his shoulder and picks up his pace. There's another faint mutter, more incomprehensible than the last one, and Kakashi glances at him curiously despite the fact that Kurama doesn't seem inclined to clarify. "You like children then," Kakashi finally offers, a poor attempt to break the silence, but all he can really think of. It earns him another soft snort, and Kurama looks away. "No," he says flatly. They all turn into snot-nosed whiners eventually. "But she's been through a lot. Figure I can put up with her clinging to me for a bit, if that can make it better." Kakashi thinks without meaning to, turning his own gaze to the path ahead. That's probably a mark in the not rude column, then. He remembers Kushina's kindness was much the same way, given offhand, and with much indignation when anyone called her on it, but always there nevertheless. Maybe Kurama really is an Uzumaki. Maybe he really is who he says. Kakashi thinks of Naruto, lonely outcast in a village that should love him, and feels a faint tremor of foreboding slip down his spine. If that's Kurama's aim, if getting close to Naruto is his goal, if he wants just to have influence over the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Kakashi will gut him without hesitation or regret. Naruto might never know who Kakashi is, might never understand what they could have been, but he's Minato and Kushina's son. He's family. Kakashi will be dead and buried before he ever abandons his family again. Chapter 6, Vespertine. Kurama's first sight of Konoha in years isn't the triumphant reclamation of a haunted ruin that Naruto always envisioned. It isn't even the clandestine mission far behind enemy lines to finally bury the dead that his Jinchuriki wanted. Instead, it's 2 hours after midnight, and Kurama's feet are sore and cold. Naho is asleep on his shoulder, bundled up in her wrap, but leaving a wet patch of drool on his shirt. He's cranky, temper short but directionless, and just the knowledge that Naruto is somewhere nearby, practically close enough to touch, has every square centimeter of his skin itching with the urge to find the little blonde brat. Hound and Umbu means that Naruto is alive. In the pale light of the moon, Kurama can just make out the four faces on the mountain, but though he's not very good at telling humans' ages, he doesn't think Hound is just 14. So that means the Yondaime is dead, and Naruto is already a Jinchuriki. His Naruto didn't fling him back quite far enough to prevent everything that probably would have taken Sasuke's chakra as well, but despite losing the chance to stop Obito's accident, or even just kill Madara when he was a child and take care of Zetsu before he could twist the knowledge in the Uchiha Shrine, Kurama can't be anything but pleased. Doing this in a time when Naruto didn't exist, saving a world that wasn't Naruto's and possibly never would be, he doesn't know how well he'd be able to do something like that. The gates gleam silver in the darkness, painted by the moon. Closed after dark, and Kurama glances at them a little warily, shifting Naho higher on his shoulder. Shinobi villages don't stop working after nightfall, but people tend to be warier, and Kurama is an unknown. He doesn't have a past, an identity, not so much as a single person able to vouch for him. Well, Killer Bee might, knowing him, but he's obnoxious and Kurama would prefer to keep half a country between them whenever possible. If they let him in. Then again, Kurama thinks a little wryly, glancing sidelong at his companion. Maybe he's not the most suspicious thing the Umbu has ever dragged home with him. The man certainly seemed eccentric enough when he was training Team 7. As if hearing the thought, Hound casts him a sideways glance and says, "You can use chakra, right?" Kurama only just manages not to splutter. He is an eons-old construct of power and might, shaped by the Sage of Six Paths himself. Use chakra? He is chakra. And if this skinny, scrawny, breakable human thinks that he can. Yes, he gets out through gritted teeth, when it becomes obvious that Hound either doesn't notice, or is ignoring his indignation. Yes, I can fucking use chakra, thank you. Hound hums, as though he's not convinced, and that's it, future teacher or not, Kurama is going to murder him. He's going to string him up by his heels and... Because he's a rude, inconsiderate bastard, Hound leaps up and forward before Kurama can take his revenge. He lands on the top of the wall, then tips over and out of sight, and Kurama gives an aggravated huff. Shoving his hair out of his eyes again, he makes sure Naho is steady, then crouches, shoves the barest trickle of chakra towards his feet, and leaps. The wall passes below him, easily cleared, and Kurama touches down lightly in the street, barely stirring the dust. It's a textbook perfect landing. Of course, Hound isn't even looking at him. He's half a block away, walking quickly, and as he turns the corner, he glances back to give Kurama an impatient jerk of his head. Dead man. That is a dead man right there, and Kurama will be more than happy to remind him of that fact. With a low growl not nearly as intimidating as it should be, and that still ticks Kurama off, because Naruto played around with his appearance easily enough, would it have been so damn hard to give him the vocal cords he was used to as well? Kurama stalks after the Umbu, reminding himself that no matter his irritation, no matter how much he wants to shove Naho at the other man and run to where Naruto is, he has to be patient. Patience is something Kurama knows. He's been trapped inside human bodies for over 100 years now, and a good portion of it was spent waiting for one of them to use too much of his chakra and let him out. Of course, it never happened, and then Naruto appeared and turned everything on its head, but the waiting still took place. Kurama knows how to bide his time, even when it's as important as this. You know, he says a little sourly as he catches up with the gray-haired Umbu, she's fast asleep. I'm sure you won't get hives if you just carry her wherever you need to go. Hound glances at him sideways, and even though it doesn't look like he took a step away, there's suddenly more room between them than there was a moment ago. He hums non-committally, then tips his head in the direction they're heading. The lights are on in the Hokage's office. Only a few more minutes, and you'll be free. Kurama rolls his eyes. So? I don't particularly want to see your Hokage, and if I'm going to find somewhere to sleep that's not the ground or a tree, I should go before the inns close. That gets him another sideways look, sharper than he'd like. If Hound gets too suspicious, it will make getting to Naruto, even just to look at him, far harder than it needs to be. Still, all Hound says is a lazy, "You don't want recognition for your actions?" "What actions?" Kurama asks grumpily. "The innkeeper in the town said she'd let me stay the night if I took care of the bandits, so I did. I somehow doubt that you needed the help, even if you are an asshole who'd knock out a terrified little brat, so I pretty much muscled my way into your mission." There's a pause, and when Kurama warily glances up, Hound is watching him much more blatantly. 8-1, the Umbu points out after a moment. "Those are heavy odds." "You're Umbu," Kurama counters, confused as to why they're even arguing about this. If that's even what they're doing. If stacked odds were a problem, you wouldn't be. "Now are you going to take her or not?" "Not," Hound says calmly. "We're here, and I don't want to wake her." "You might as well keep carrying her." Then, casual as anything, he subtly quickens his steps and strides right into the administration building. Fuck, Kurama thinks tiredly, staring after Hound as he pauses on the threshold. He really doesn't want to do this. Really. Going to the Hokage's office, having to stand in front of that desk, with the familiar view of Konoha at night beyond it. No. That's supposed to be Naruto's chair, his desk, his window. That's supposed to be Naruto in those robes, that stupid hat. And anyone else, they might as well be an imposter, a fake. No matter how much Naruto loved Sarutobi, the man isn't Kurama's Hokage. He isn't Naruto. He just isn't. And no matter how easily Kurama gave himself away to Kokuo, he's not about to broadcast the news to anyone else. Kokuo would have recognized him by his chakra if nothing else, because the Gobi knew him when he wasn't completely consumed with rage and hatred. But the people of Konoha have never seen him another way, and Kurama doesn't want to risk them finding out. Resenting the Sandaime for his identity, being rude to the man called the god of shinobi just because he's not the one Kurama wants to see, that's probably a good way to get their suspicions fixed squarely on him. And Kurama knows himself, it'll be damned hard not to be rude, given the twisting, roiling knot of emotion in his chest. Still, it's not like there's really much choice. If anyone can get him tossed out of Konoha on his ear, it's the Hokage, and getting in after that without alerting the barrier squads will take more work than Kurama would like. He's got power, definitely, but it's similar to Naruto's. Finesse isn't something that comes easily to him, and to slip in undetected. Well, even Obito didn't manage it when he met with Itachi before the massacre, and he was trained by the sneaky bastard Madara. In comparison, Kurama might as well be a hurricane trying to pass itself off as a zephyr. With a huff that's nearly a groan, Kurama follows Hound, slipping through the darkened lower levels and up the stairs. There are more Umbu around him. He can feel their chakra, even though they're probably trying to hide, but he ignores them in favor of tracking Hound's voice, then Sarutobi's. The office door is open when he reaches it, and Kurama steels himself, touches Naho's back to ground himself a little, and then steps through. Sharp, dark eyes land on him instantly as the Sandaime gracefully rises to his feet. The robes and hat are gone, something Kurama is grateful for, but it doesn't do much to make Sarutobi look any less dangerous. Maybe a civilian would write him off as an old man, but Kurama can feel the vast, perfectly controlled chakra coiled beneath his skin, just waiting to be used. This is the man who walks firmly in the gray of a shinobi's world, who survived 3 wars. Kurama will never see him as anything less than the serious threat he is. "Hokage-sama," he says quietly, bowing as much as he can without waking Naho. The Sandaime smiles faintly, eyes crinkling. It's a warm expression, natural more than calculated, and that's one of the things that makes Sarutobi so dangerous. Every move he makes, he means. His conviction is a terrifying thing. "I hear that you are Uzumaki Kurama," he says warmly. "You're a long way from home, then." Kurama stiffens a little, and has to force himself not to take a step back. For half a second, all he can see is Naruto falling, a dark sky with Kaguya looming before them, blood on the ground and the smell of rot in the air. That was home, Naruto was his home, and now. I have no home, Kurama growls, low and sharp. He carefully tugs Naho's arms from around his neck, settles her in the chair before the Hokage's desk, and then takes a step back. When he glances up, Sarutobi is watching him with something unreadable on his face, and Kurama has to grit his teeth for fear of snarling at the man again. Once he has his mouth under control, he takes a breath and says, "Mission complete, right? Then if you don't need me for anything else, I have to find a place to sleep." One last jerky bow, and that's getting old fast, no matter how he knows that if he wants to blend in with the humans he has to follow their customs, and he turns on his heel, marching out of the room without waiting to be dismissed. It's idiotic, showing such clear disdain, but this place is getting to him. All of Konoha, the formerly dead faces once again appearing everywhere, buildings that Kurama saw collapsing into rubble steady and strong once more. There are only a handful of people on the streets, but they're mostly shinobi, and that makes it even worse. At one time, Naruto knew every last one of his shinobi by name. He knew their faces, their files, the stories that the official records left out. They loved him, and he loved them. He died for them, and they'll never know it. Whatever version of Naruto that exists is going to have to fight to get them to acknowledge him. He's going to have to struggle and strain and bleed, just so they'll stop calling him a monster, just so they'll see the hero instead of the Jinchuriki, and Kurama hates them for it. Hates every last one, from Naruto's future teammates to the oldest civilian, and Naruto wouldn't want that. Naruto loves Konoha, loves its people no matter how they hate him. The little bits of resentment festering in his soul are so much less than they would be in anyone else. Kurama had to dig, the first time, in order to find them. It was hard, and in any other person that resentment would have consumed them years earlier. But Naruto is special, and never let other people's impressions rule him. Kurama needs to leave. He needs to see that Naruto is alive, prove it to himself, and then he needs to go. Akatsuki is aware that someone is hunting them, so he has to move quickly if he wants to catch them off guard. There's no time to waste. The sooner Akatsuki is gone, the sooner Kurama can deal with the Geto Mazo, preferably by smashing it into tiny little bits and scattering the dust to the winds. His fists clench, and he has to push down the chakra that wants to rise, reacting to a threat that isn't present. Maybe he should take out the statue first. That would neatly negate the problem of Akatsuki catching the bijou. Without somewhere to seal them, it will be useless to capture them. And there wouldn't be a vessel for the Jubi, even if they did manage to resurrect it. Kurama likes this plan. He likes it even more because it means he gets to bring his full power to bear, and break something really thoroughly. In this, at least, he'll need to be subtle. Barging into the Akatsuki base flat out is a bad idea, and while Kurama isn't entirely opposed to those, he is opposed to getting ripped out of his body and stuffed into a demonic statue. Again. So, he'll have to make his move when the base is empty, or at least mostly unoccupied. Which means he'll have to rig some sort of distraction, but what on earth would be important enough to get all 9 Akatsuki members out? A hand on his shoulder, sudden and startling. On instinct, half of it Naruto's well-remembered reflex, and the other half driven by the memory of gray-veined hands dragging shinobi down to their deaths. Kurama spins, lashing out with claws. They scrape across porcelain, leaving long gouges before Kurama wrenches back, heart pounding in his throat. "Don't do that." He snarls. "Do you want to lose that empty head of yours?" He can't quite see the Umbu's expression, but he gets the feeling that there's a brow arched in his direction. "Oops," Hound says blandly, raising a hand to finger the long score marks in his mask. Then he shrugs faintly and tosses Kurama the envelope he's carrying. Automatically, Kurama catches it, feeling the heft. It's thick, full of paper, by the weight, and with a faint frown Kurama opens it. "Rio, and a lot of them. If you were trading bandit extermination for a room, I'm assuming you're low on funds," Hound says, calm and the next best thing to lazy. "That's half of the mission pay. The Hokage agreed that you earned it with your assistance." The flash fire surge of fury takes Kurama by surprise, and he clenches a hand around the envelope. I don't need your pity, he growls, and the only reason he doesn't throw it straight back in Hound's face is because he knows the Umbu would dodge it. I don't need anyone's pity. I've survived on my own, I can. It's not pity, Hound cuts him off, still calm. You were my comrade for this mission, and you took care of the girl. It's what's owed to you for that, and I have more than enough money. Splitting the pay is nothing to me, but it will help you get a room and a meal. Accept it. A tip of his head, faint in the moonlight, and then Hound leaps up onto the rooftops and is gone. Kurama can't move, frozen in the street with the man's words ringing in his ears. You were my comrade, he said. You were my comrade, so much like Naruto's words to him on the battlefield. So much like that first acknowledgement of him as something more than a mindless, malicious beast. So much like the words he's held dear for decades now. You're not the monster fox anymore. You're one of my teammates from Konoha, Kurama. Naruto's first use of his name, and the memory of it makes Kurama's eyes burn, makes him press a hand over his face and concentrate on breathing. Comrades, and he hadn't thought he'd ever be called that again, because this is a mission, alone in what might as well be a foreign, hostile land, and Kurama can allow nothing to distract him, stall him. There's absolutely nothing that will stop him from rooting out Akatsuki, and destroying all of Kagaya's paths back to existence, but it's nice. Nice to hear, nice to know that, even for a few hours, he was what he used to be, a part of something larger. A partner, even if it wasn't to Naruto. It will never happen again, of course, but Kurama can still appreciate that it did. Enough, he tells himself, and this time it works. He shakes off the thoughts, tucks the memory of Naruto's words and bright-edged conviction back down inside himself, and turns away. It's tempting to leave now, head for the Akatsuki base in the mountains graveyard, but he doesn't have a plan yet, doesn't even have the vaguest idea of one. One night to rest his feet, safe in a shinobi village, and a warm bed won't hurt. Tomorrow he'll find Naruto, even if all he can manage is passing him on the street. Tomorrow he'll make sure that his Jinchuriki is alright, and then he'll go. He tells himself yet again that once he does, he won't look back. Well, the Sandame says a little wryly, if someone went looking for an actor who could play an Uzumaki, they certainly found their money's worth in Kurama. Kakashi doesn't look at his Hokage, eyes on the 4 long scratches decorating the mask in his hands, but he nods in agreement. That was Kushina's reaction, almost exactly, the one time Minato tried to split his mission pay with her. Of course, she'd also beaten him over the head with her sheathed tanto and kicked him in the ass so hard that he flew face first into a mud puddle, and Kakashi is relieved that Kurama's temper doesn't quite seem to match hers, even if the rest of their actions are eerily similar. You think he's an actor? He asks, finally glancing up. Sarutobi's mouth tightens a little and he sighs, turning away towards the window. I don't know, he says after a moment. It could be a very clever trap, given who else bears the Uzumaki name, but there is grief in that man, Kakashi, and I don't think it's the type that could be faked. Kakashi thinks of Kurama's voice when he talked about his brothers, thinks about the small, sad smile he gave when he spoke his name. Remembers the moments of inattention on the road, touched with grimness, the way he looked at Konoha when it came into view. Uncertainty, wariness, resentment, longing, grief, all of it played over his face, then was firmly stuffed away and ignored. That's a reaction Kakashi is intimately familiar with. Uzushio fell a long time ago, is what he finally says. Sarutobi hums, not quite agreement, but acknowledgement of a factual statement. It did. However, Kurama couldn't have been more than 12 at the time, and losses suffered as a child are hard to overcome. He gives Kakashi half a glance before turning away, and Kakashi grimaces, knowing that was pointedly aimed at him. Entirely true, but a little more blatant than the Hokage would normally allow himself to be. Then again, seeing a ghost is always unsettling. Even if it is just a ghost of a bloodline thought lost. Carefully, Kakashi sets his mask down on the desk between them, making sure the claw marks are completely visible, and offers, what he used against the bandits. I've never seen an ability like that. It was like a shockwave. Not gravity, just force. Enough to break bones. As far as I'm aware, there were no Kekii Genkai unique to the Uzumaki, Sarutobi allows after a moment of thought. But then, Kurama hardly looks to be pure Uzumaki. Something from his other parent, perhaps? Given the state of our relations with Kumo, we can hardly expect a full accounting of their bloodlines. He touches the surface of the mask lightly, then glances up. Since you've already seen him fight, I want you to follow him, either as Hound or as yourself. Whoever he is, there are too many questions, and I don't want to be caught off guard. Yes, Hokage-sama, Kakashi murmurs, dipping into a brief bow and then stepping away. A shunshin carries him down to the street, and he pauses in the moonlight, casting a glance around the sleeping village. Kurama had faltered when Kakashi called him a comrade. His eyes had gone wide, his breathing stuttered, and he'd frozen as though Kakashi had stabbed him. Except that getting stabbed likely wouldn't have made him so much as blink, and Kakashi's words had practically cut his legs out from under him. It was the reaction of a man alone, a man with nothing and no expectations of that state ever changing. Kakashi knows that intimately, too, from the first lightless days after Rin's suicide, and then again after Minato's death. It speaks of a loss that gutted, that nearly killed. A loss that would have been kinder were it actually fatal, because what it leaves behind a husk, a doll, a creature of grief and anger and aching, tearing loneliness is worse than any sort of death could ever be. His suspicions haven't abated in the slightest. Kurama is still one half-step above enemy, and only kept there by the genuineness of his response to Naho. One wrong twitch and Kakashi won't hesitate to kill him, to remove him as a threat to the village and Naruto. However, that doesn't mean he can't understand the man's grief. He understands it all too well. With a tired breath, Kakashi summons Baisuke, one of his Nin-ken who can be counted on to actually manage subtlety, unlike the majority of them, and sends him after the redhead, with orders to report when the man wakes. For his part, Kakashi heads towards his tiny apartment, more than ready to sleep. The mission was hardly strenuous, but an entire day walking next to a man who could possibly attack him at any moment or attempt to kidnap the daimyo's illegitimate daughter and only current heir has left him tense and eager for a few hours of mindlessness. Despite the draw of unconsciousness, however, he finds his feet carrying him right past his building, through the darkened training ground with its 3 familiar posts, and finally coming to a stop before an achingly familiar shape. It's too dark to read the names carved on the memorial stone, but even so, Kakashi's eyes unerringly fall on the correct lines, and he tucks his hands into the pockets of his flak jacket as he says his silent hellos. Obito. Rin. Minato. Kushina. 6 years now, since those last 2 names were added. 6 years since Kakashi lost the closest thing he had to family since his father's suicide. 6 years since he threw himself headlong into Umbu, never quite expecting to survive. He's a genius though, no matter how little good it's done him, and part of his genius is the ability to adapt. He's lasted, even if he didn't expect to. And now, looking back, he regrets it. Not his survival, but the decision as a whole. It's been years, and he's come to terms with the Sandame's actions, Minato's, Kushina's. He understands too, that Minato's choice was the necessary one where the village was concerned, and while he'll always miss his sensei, he's proud of him too. The only one he really hates is himself. 6 years ago, he buried himself in Umbu, half slow suicide and half a quest for forgetfulness, and it's only now that he's finally surfacing. Only now that he can see how his retreat has affected the one person he never wanted to hurt. Naruto has grown up alone, outcast, reviled. The only kindness he's ever experienced has come from the Sandame, his academy teacher, and the owner of Ichiraku. Kakashi himself has done nothing, and though he loves the boy, he can hardly bear to look at him sometimes. He's so much like his parents, and it hurts. How selfish, Kakashi thinks a little wryly, but really, when in his life hasn't he been selfish? Always protecting himself, always retreating, always holding himself apart until it's just a little too late. With his father, with Obito, with Rin maybe, if he'd just tried harder, he could have saved all of them. Now he'll never know. And still his cowardice is keeping him from being anything to Naruto, even a distant friend. He could, if he wanted to. It's been long enough that a solitary Umbu befriending a lonely orphan won't raise too many brows, and Kakashi is already considered eccentric even among shinobi. Minato's enemies are no longer quite so interested in getting their revenge on anyone connected to the Yondaime, and the Sandaime has managed to keep Naruto's existence quiet until now, so very few people know Minato spawned. Kakashi could walk up to Naruto, buy him ramen and gain a friend, and no one would look twice at it. He already knows he won't. It's cruel, craven, selfish. It's terrible and awful and despicable, but he won't. Maybe someday. Maybe then. But not today, not tomorrow. Kakashi is mired, stuck. Understanding and forgiveness don't do away with the hurt, and not even the thought of Naruto in need of a friend, of support, is enough to drag Kakashi forward. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.